Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Leadership Lessons with Cheri. Hopefully, each week you are tuning in and getting just a small piece of information that can help you be the leader that you were born to be. My goal in starting this channel really was for you to be able to gain some insight into the very complicated, but also very rewarding world of leadership. I think as we have evolved as a society over the years, even the role of the leader has changed. I think back to just when I first became a professional, or actually working in the adult world, I think about who my leaders were as I took on different jobs. And some of them were very caring, but the majority of them were more about, here's the checklist, we have to get this done. Which over the years, as we've evolved in learning different things, we learn, sometimes you need those checklists, right? Because the things that need to get done need to get done. However, the more successful leaders are going to become those leaders that also put that personal touch into it and really grow their people, because when your people feel empowered to do the good work, then you have a team standing behind you, being able to say, yep, I'm on board with you and your vision, and we're going to take this organization to the next level. And that's the dream right there, right? But people have a lot of emotional needs sometimes, right? And I don't want to say that in a negative way at all. So please don't hear me say that. But what I do think we have to just think about, and this was reminded to me on Saturday, I attended an online conference with Mel Robbins. If you don't know who she is, she's phenomenal. You can check out her podcast and her information, just do a search for her. However, she was talking about so many things in the area of women leadership and financial independence for women. So it was geared in that direction. But knowing her leadership skills, because I have followed her for a while, how she speaks is very profound when we talk about what's happening in the world after we've endured so many different crises, so to speak, right? And I'm not going to say that there are more or less in 2023 as compared to 30, 40, 50 years ago. However, I will say this, we're more exposed, I would say, to these different things because of media capabilities, right? We know things that are happening because of the media before families know that they're happening sometimes, right? And if you just turn on the news or you get on your social media feeds, it's all there. And some people know how to filter that well, and some people take it very, very personally, and their emotional state, their mental state is affected by that. And one of the things that she spoke about was, since the pandemic, and we all have to admit the pandemic wreaked havoc on so many people, but since the pandemic, so many of us have forgotten our boundaries. So many of us have become emotionally different. So many of us just view life differently. I know it really was a time that, just in my own world, I was a public school leader. It was a time where I actually saw teachers shift their mindset of expectations for them. And, it was interesting because I think a lot of it had to do with, we had that period of time where we worked from home completely, and then asking them to come back to school because we're essential, we were essential workers and needed to get back, and then try to navigate the whole scene of hybrid learning, some in person, some online, just like people are working hybrid situations. And then realizing it wasn't working to educate children, especially young children, and then understanding and accepting the fact that we had to go back to how life was prior, when you have this carrot dangling, right? Because I'll be honest, when we were working from home that last semester of 2019, 2020 school year, when the pandemic first broke out, my life was phenomenal. I slept in an extra hour each day. I was able to walk my dog throughout the day. So I didn't have to do all of the walking in the dark in the evening. I was able to shut down at a certain time. I didn't have to drive anywhere, so I didn't fight with traffic, and I was able to get good workouts in. I was able to do so many things that were different. I was able to dress differently, do my hair differently, do my makeup differently if I wanted. I had downtime throughout the day rather than 100% constantly being on. And to be truthful, even as the principal, I had less, what do we want to say? How do I want to say this? Less communication concerns from both staff and parents throughout that time, because we were just doing our best, right? And it was very loose. Our structure was so loose. Parents didn't have anything to complain about. Teachers didn't have a whole lot to complain about. And so my life was pretty fantastic. And then going back and having to really dig down deep and get real, because it was harder. That was difficult. And then taking that carrot away 100%. So having said that, I think that one of the things that we have to remember is that leadership is a people business. And I say that almost every single week with y'all. We have to have the managerial piece in there, right? I'm going to be honest. We've got to have the data. We've got to have the checklist. We've got to get things done, right? And some things we don't have a lot of negotiating with it, specifically to your line of work. However, there are going to be those non-negotiables that just have to get done. However, we all know that as this leadership position has evolved, as we've gone through these crises, as I said, empowering our people is going to be so important to be able to do. Now, when I started as a leader, I had a lot of different role models. I'm going to put that in quotes, to follow, right? I had people that did some excellent work, and I had people that did some awful work that I was associated with. And I learned things to do from some and things not to do from others. And then I had to adapt and make it fit my own personality, help my own characteristics bring in who I was going to be as a leader, who my identity was going to be. And if you're a new leader in your first to third year, you're probably still figuring that out, right? And even as you get into years 4 and 5, you're probably going to have, there'll be a little more sparse, but situations that arise that, wow, I've never done this before. How am I going to handle this? And that becomes your identity. As I have evolved over the last 16 years, I've learned, like I said, from a lot of people in person, but also from different leaders out there who publish or who speak or who provide workshops or whatever. And one of the people that I just really think I have the utmost respect for, and I've never met her in person, but that's Brene Brown. Brene Brown speaks a lot about leadership and how to really get your people to feel empowered and believe in you to be able to keep working towards your mission and vision. And her book, Dare to Lead, which I have right here. And if you have not read this, this is an amazing book to read for sure. I would highly recommend. And any of her work is highly recommended. But this book is, I don't know, it just kind of shifts that view of leadership. And one of the biggest things about this one is talking about being vulnerable. And so many times in the past, leaders, as I mentioned, there was this different mindset that if you showed emotion, if you were vulnerable, if you didn't know the answers, you were weak. You were not an effective leader. But as times have changed, vulnerability is super important. And here's what she says, just in one of her sections here, that there are these 6 myths about vulnerability. And I'm not going to go through and describe each one, but I am going to read them to you so that you can kind of get a feel for this. And I want you, like I said, to kind of hook you in to go get this book and check it out. But she says that there are these myths out there about being vulnerable, as I mentioned, and that if we can overcome those and without getting to a place where we're over the top, right? Oversharing, over transparent, but being vulnerable, people are going to see us as human and they're going to believe in us a little bit more. So let's look at these 6 myths. The first one is, as I mentioned, vulnerability shows weakness. And of course, we know that that's not true. However, we still have people working on that. And I get it. I get it. I was there at first when I first started my journey in leadership. I didn't want to look like I was weak, right? I wanted to look like I knew what I was doing. So that one does really resonate with me. There's another myth that says, I just don't do vulnerability. I'm black and white. I do it this way. This is the way it's supposed to be. These are our policies and procedures, period. Well, guys, there are a lot of shades of gray. And so I think that's a section definitely to check out. Myth number 3 is I can do it alone. I can go it alone. Well, being vulnerable means that you are not afraid to ask for help. And how many people out there are afraid to ask for help? Because it's a sign of weakness, right? That's what's ingrained. But being able to say, I don't know this and I need help. Honestly, I think that's really a strength of a leader, because you know what your strengths are and you know where your areas that you still have to work on. And you're not going to pretend or fool people. You're going to be truthful and vulnerable when you need that support. You can engineer the uncertainty and discomfort out of vulnerability. You can't. There's going to be those feelings of uncertainty and being uncomfortable when you're vulnerable, right? Especially if you've never done it before. But some people think, oh, I can just avoid being uncomfortable by not being vulnerable. And again, great little section to look at. Myth number 5, trust comes before vulnerability. So many people think, oh, I got to know my people. I got to trust my people. But actually, vulnerability develops the trust. They see you as a real person. They see you as a human, not just a robot running the organization. Something great to think about. And then, of course, the final one, vulnerability is disclosure, that we're sharing too much about our own lives. And sure, that can possibly happen, right? Because anybody can take something to an extreme. But what if you set those boundaries? Okay, I'm not sharing about this, but when people ask me how my family is, yeah, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to share with them. I'm going to let them know I'm a person. One of the things that happened to me, and I'm going to wrap up with this story. I was the assistant principal before becoming the principal at my very first school building. And I was in this position for about a half a year. And then we had an interim come in, but I basically was named the interim, and then I was placed in the position at the end of that school year. And as everything was evolving and the principal was being removed, I had gotten a phone call, and the call was from admin people, and they were like, okay, this is what we need to have happen. Something's going to be happening on campus today at such and such time. We need you not to be there, and we need your other assistant principal not to be there, because there were 2 of us. And so this is what needs to happen. And one of the things was we had to leave the campus. And I actually had a very important meeting scheduled with the staff that day for a training. And I'll never forget this. I mean, it seems like it was just yesterday, right? I can remember every single detail of this conversation. And I remember standing there on the phone with my director, and she said, you figure it out. You have to cancel that meeting, and you have to leave the building. I'm telling you, it's crucial. And I was like, okay, so my wheels are spinning, right? Because I'm thinking about timelines. I'm thinking about calendars. I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, when am I going to get this done? And I came up with this plan. I got the other assistant principal in, and I said, okay, this is what we're going to say. We've had emergencies with our family, with our children. My daughter was in high school at the time, and her children were already grown, but that something has come up with our families, and that family is very important, and that we have to leave the building. And she's like, okay, I'm good with that. So I get on the announcements at the end of the day and I said, okay, guys, the meeting has been canceled for today. I know that this is going to put us in a bind. We're going to get everything figured out. I can promise you that. However, we do need to take care of family, and family is important. And the moment I said that, I thought, okay, I just made up a story. However, I truly do believe that family is first. My daughter's going to come first no matter what. And when all of this went down and I got placed into these new positions, I went on that premise. Family comes first. And I had a staff member about 2 months later come in, and she said, I know I need to be at this meeting after school. However, something is going on at home. I'm not able to talk about it. But I remember the day you got in the announcements and you said, family comes first. And since you have been in your new position, I've seen you walk that talk. And so I know you're going to understand. People will remember that stuff. I was vulnerable in saying, okay, I get it. And I have to let you go do your thing. Did I want her to miss this meeting? Nope. But I had to be in a place where I was giving her the grace. I was accepting. I was vulnerable enough to say family does come first. And if I were in her shoes, I would have done the same thing. So I just want to wrap up with that story because, guys, when you can balance all of the things that we have to do as leaders, including being vulnerable, you are going to be on the path of such great success. You will not even believe it, because your people will believe in you. And when they believe in you and they trust you and they know that you are leading them in the right direction and you're giving them the space to do the work that needs to be done, what you can do is out of this world. There is no limit to it. I hope that each week, as you listen to Leadership Lessons with Cheri, you gain that just one little piece of information that you can take back and implement immediately. I hope that it's something that sparks a little something on your journey that you might want to go research and learn. But truly, Brene Brown, she's been a speaker. She's a published author, clearly, and does great work with leadership. Check her out. You will not be disappointed. All right, guys. I will see you next week, right back here on Leadership Lessons with Cheri. However, next week, I'm going to release the episode on Wednesday because of the Thanksgiving holiday, so that you can get a little last minute nugget before you go into your holiday break. But promise me one thing, give yourself a little time next week to enjoy your friends and family and to be grateful, to reflect on all the things that you are thankful for. Because one thing I will say is you'll never get time back and you'll never get opportunities back with your family and friends. And you don't want to be on your deathbed one day, because we all know that that will happen at some point, saying, I wish I would have. So go enjoy the holiday. I will talk with you next week right here on Leadership Lessons with Cheri.